The caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. By Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. Also with additional association from Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. So, this is it. Championship finals evening for Season 5 of caterhamracer.com, and we venture to the real-life season finale venue for Caterham Motorsport Racing, that being Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire. We're back in the high-powered Caterham 420Rs, and we have a total championship tie on drop scores heading into this final meeting, where anything is certain to happen in this final fun pair of races to crown our Season 5 champion. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson back in the commentary box again. And Chris, this is what we've been building to for the whole season, not just in real life for Caterham Racing, but for the virtual guys as well. And we now have got this one-on-one duel between Christian Szaruta and David Rowe. They're tied on points on drop scores, but the drivers behind them can certainly take advantage if they fall into problems as well. It's going to be quite exciting to round off to see who takes the title this time.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on the finale night. It's definitely building up to be quite an exciting evening. Just to bring up here now the standings as we sort of came into this evening. So big scores on the left-hand side are total points scored, but the points on the right are kind of getting more and more important as time goes on. These are the drop score totals, so this is when we've removed the bottom two scores for each driver. So you can see that Andrew Parker is actually leading in overall points, followed by Tom McEwing and Richard Gallagher. But on the drop scores column, the smaller number, you'll see that it's down to 5th and 6th places with David and Christian before they are scoring the highest points on our drop score total. Now, there's lots and lots of different scenarios that could happen and probably will happen this evening on stream. So it's impossible to give you exactly all those scenarios to start with. But after race 1, we're hoping that we can actually break it down into who needs to do what to win. But certainly David and Christian are coming into tonight's race looking very strong. But they haven't got any scope to... They don't have any scope to make any other mistakes. They're already carrying 2-0 scores because they weren't able to make a particular race weekend. So at this stage, they any dropping down the order from then could be and will have an effect on their championship.
Yeah, this is essentially a scenario where they've got no points to drop, so essentially what they score tonight will essentially count towards their final total on drop scores. So it really is, in some cases, whoever finishes in front of whom and outscores the other driver the most is going to be able to pick up the title. There is also a scenario where, of course, if they end up with a tie on points after the final couple of races tonight, then, of course, it will go on count back, and essentially, if it is tied, due to the fact that Christian has 6 race wins compared to David Rowe's 2, it will mean that on that count back factor, Christian would be champion by means of more wins. But that's a connotation we have to think about, of course, when we get to the final race in a little bit. The first race coming out, of course, is just after this qualifying session, 7 minutes to go, and as we expected, it is the top 2 in the championship up towards the front of the grid. Szaruta currently on provisional pole by nearly a fraction under 0.6 of a second, and David Rowe just a couple of tenths away from third place as well. So he'll be starting as geographically directly behind Christian, but of course it's Steve Arnell who has put on a storming effort in this very winding, twisty Cadwell Park circuit in Lincolnshire, who's currently, well, he was second, but he's now seen David Rowe pop up into the front row spot now, just under 2 tenths back. So Christian then and David look as though at the moment, with 6.5 minutes to go in qualifying, they're going to be starting right on the front row of the grid together, and it's going to be quite a run down towards turn 1 on a circuit that really doesn't always favour overtaking opportunities, but if you can pick one off, it's usually quite a spectacular one, because they do come up few and far between on a circuit this narrow, winding and twisty.
Yeah, Caterhams aren't very large cars, and this is one of the tracks in the UK where actually the track is almost as narrow as a Caterham. So whereas we can go 4-5 wide and maybe even 6 wide at places like Thruxton and Silverstone, here you don't really have that opportunity. It's more sort of traditional, and it's sort of a single file or overtaking into some of the tighter bends. Now that doesn't mean that our drivers won't attempt to overtake in many different places. It's just what they do. But certainly it's a little bit more hold your breath and see what happens.
And it's particularly with some of the winding and more hillier sections of this circuit, particularly the launch pad that is off the exit of the Hall bends of some of these cars, and particularly with the faster cars that we've got in on the grid this week tonight for the 420Rs. This is obviously a very different beast in terms of the way it handles, the way it grips and goes compared to the Academy car, and we've talked about it before, the fact that some drivers prefer one car to the other, some can adapt to both. It's going to be interesting to see how who out of the two championship contenders favours this car more and gets on with this car more. Although we have seen in that instance, that being said, David and Christian are that kind of rarity of those who can handle both in equally decent measure, hence their strong results. So it looks as though possibly it's going to be fairly evenly matched given the fact they're so close in qualifying, but David is going to be pushing as hard as he can, and usually at a circuit like this when it's so narrow and so tight, the start and being able to get in front in the opening couple of laps is all crucial, particularly when the cars in front can easily make their cars wide as possible and provide overtaking opportunities as the race goes on.
Yeah, it's worth reiterating a couple of notes on the simulation tonight. The end of Hall Bends is, as you've already described it, a launch pad. If you carry too much speed into there, your car really does fly. It doesn't happen in real life, so it's an unfortunate sort of quirk of this mod, but nevertheless we might see some spectacular incidents going through Hall Bends. And the other one is that if there's a jump start by anyone, there's no way to serve that jump start on this mod, unfortunately. So really, Pete, I've asked all the drivers to be super careful about not making a jump start, because it will be race over as soon as it happens.
Yeah, and that could be an additional factor, particularly when there's so much tension in the championship battle. If the top two just slip on the clutch a little bit too soon, it could potentially spell the difference between still being in the fight in the last two races and right down to the last lap of the season, and possibly ending in disaster and dropping points to your rival, particularly when Christian and David don't have any scores to drop. By not appearing at one of our meetings earlier on in the season, that means that they have nothing to drop, and every single point where they score will have to count tonight when it comes to the championship. The man on screen here has just finished wrapping up his real-life championship campaign, Freddie Chiddicks, who came, as we both experienced, Chris, on commentary this past weekend. He literally came within a lap of becoming Academy Green Group champion, but it was just the fact that Jeff Newman, on the last lap of the season, not only took the lead, but he stole the fastest lap point away, and that was enough to give him the title by a single solitary point. He'll be looking for a bit of redemption tonight, as the fact that he's going to try and put himself a strong lap time. He hasn't quite put a quick lap time in just yet, so he's been waiting towards the end of the session, but hopefully Freddie will be quite buoyant by the fact that he's finished his first season of Caterham racing up in the runner-up spot. He won a bit of revenge for tonight to get a good result, but even so, what a mega effort from him in just his first year of racing, and especially racing one of these mega little Caterham cars.
Yeah, congratulations to him and all the Academy racers for what was a spectacular set of races at Snetterton just last weekend. If you were there on the banks, or if you were watching on our live stream, you'll know how exciting that all got. And yeah, 2/10, 1 lap or 1 point away from the victory. It hurts, and to his credit, he took that very well and absolutely stormed away with the Autumn Trophy race. Absolutely dominant victory in that to show his absolute class. And I think he's also going to be racing at a special event at Cadwell with us in a couple of weekends' time.
Yes, indeed. For those who were competing in the Caterham Academy, they get one more chance to race this year. They've essentially completed their graduation as Academy drivers, and now they get to compete in the Caterham Road Sport 2022 Challenge, which is taking place in a couple of weeks here at Cadwell Park in real life. And that will be, as it was last year for the those who are graduating from last year's Academy, they got a chance to experience the Road Sport Spec car a year early, or a few months early. They'll be able to do exactly the same at Cadwell Park, and it's a special, and like the Autumn Trophy, it's a non-championship race to get a chance to feel their way into the new specification, because particularly they get brand new tyres, they get the M1 ZZS rubber, and they also get the rear anti-roll bar put in, and it gives them about a second or two's improvement in pace compared to the Academy car they've had before. So that'll be a crucial learning step for them, and there's about roughly, from what I've seen, about roughly 16, 17 drivers that are entered right now going to that race, and we expect more of them turning up on the grid before next weekend's action. But that'll be a great chance for them to get a bit of a leg up on those who aren't choosing to contest that race, Chris, and it'll give them a chance to start to dial the car in on its brand new setup and its brand new tyres and roll bar in Road Sport Spec to kind of get it a little bit extra preparation ahead of the 2022 campaign, which is certainly going to be just as exciting as this year's, if not more.
Yeah, it just, like I say, it's a really nice opportunity to get used to the car ahead of next season. The reason I was following Andrew Parker on that last lap was because he was absolutely plumb last until that lap. He's put himself up into 7th. He's still got a bit compromised, and he's only got this probably one more lap. This lap he's on now to actually to move up any further. Obviously, Andrew coming in here as points leader into the session, but certainly a difficult qualifying for him so far.
Yeah, it has been a little bit, and he's got to try and pick us up a little bit. Parker only 7th fastest and almost a second off, and this is a circuit where, because it's quite narrow, there's very fine margins for error here, so that means you don't have too much liberty of running wide too much, because if you do so, it can really ruin your lap, as we see Alan Curtis doing quite well here in 12th quickest at the moment. Shout out to Alan, actually, because he had one of his best weekends to date in real life in the, and I'm going to get this right now, in the Caterham 310R Championship.
270.
Have I got that right, Chris? 270s. I knew it was one of the ones without headlights. So he did a really great job with the 270R Championship. He got his first ever front row start. He didn't quite get a good first start before the race was red flagged. He got a great chance to redeem himself by getting a better second start for that first race, and was up in there in the leading pack, and he kept himself towards the front and picked up a couple of personal best results. So Alan certainly will be feeling good coming in tonight, and even though he's not exactly right on the front running pace, to be able to carry that momentum and that confidence into tonight's virtual racing after his real world exploits certainly must be a good confidence boost for him too. Yeah,
absolutely, and it was like one of the reasons I wanted to pick him out this evening, just to congratulate him on a fantastic weekend, and that's a nice, really strong thing going into 310. I believe he's moving up the ranks for next season.
We'll look forward to seeing how he gets on in the 310R ranks, as will everyone else, because of course our academy, we're looking forward to seeing our next crop of academy drivers coming through next year, as well as of course seeing how next year's Road Sport 270, 310 and 7 Championship UK grids all play out, surely with new drivers coming in each, and whether they're moving up from the previous steps in the ladder or just simply just coming back in after a break of a year or two. But of course what the great thing is that we've had quite a couple of strong years of the academy in terms of really good competitive drivers, and that will certainly help us to keep on building the grids as the next couple of seasons roll on. So qualifying is now finished for our season finale tonight. Andrew Parker actually puts in quite a mega effort right at the end of the session. We talked about him trying to pick up a bit more pace, and he was certainly listening or tuned into us, because he pumped in a 1:37.305 to go quickest by almost a tenth of a second. What a mega lap that was from Andrew to get himself on pole position. Then the two championship contenders, Christian Szaruta on the front row in second. David Rowe will have to start back in third alongside Richard Gallagher on the second row. But it's Guy Crawford and Steve Arnell, two perennial drivers that have been up there around the top 5 and top 10 places all season in the past couple of caterhamracer.com campaigns. They will start for the first race of the season finale on row 3. Tom McEwing, who is getting himself ready for next year's Caterham Academy, he'll start 7th. Then John Lang is 8th. JP Zennis will start in 9th to prop up the 5th row of the grid alongside Ryan Hooker, who will start in the final top 10 spot. And then the last few cars we've got on our 17 car grid for finale. Paul Fernhoff and Alan Curtis will start on the 6th row. Newly crowned vice champion in the Academy Green Group for this year, Freddie Chiddix, will start 13th alongside Matt Larby. Next, Michael Coomber, and a welcome to Chris Burr tonight, who starts 16th. And then Graham Hopkins will round out the 17 car grid for tonight's first of two 15-minute races, where we'll finally get to crown our caterhamracer.com Season 5 champion at last, between Christian Szaruta and David Rowe. So with just a couple of minutes to go until we get racing underway, it's time to kind of put ourselves a bit on the spot and kind of put our chips down a little bit. Szaruta versus Rowe, of course, if anything happens to each of them, obviously there is the prospect that other drivers around them in the points can start to take advantage and pick up stuff, as we, of course, have to say thank you, marshals. But in terms of Christian versus David, surely, at least for track position at the moment for this first start, Christian has the advantage, but if David can shoot the gap through the middle row and get a really good launch, he can at least pull himself alongside and get himself onto the right part of the circuit that he needs to be to get the racing line to get ahead of Christian in the first couple of turns. This is going to be a crucial start given how tough it is to overtake here, but usually history dictates in many cases, Chris, that Christian, when he gets a strong start, he's the more difficult driver to try and beat. No disrespect to David at all, but Christian tends to make his car wider and drive much more defensively in terms of holding those behind him, and it's David that usually has to do the chasing. So do you see that possibly playing out like that if Christian gets in front, or do you think the circuit might possibly suit someone like David a bit more?
Yeah, I've not actually watched either of them driving around, but yeah, you've got to believe that Christian's done six wins under his belt this season so far. It's been a very impressive set of results. Obviously, David has had a sort of more consistent running, but just a slightly lower down. He's only had 2 wins so far to Christian's 6, so it's quite a big difference there, and definitely sort of goes to the fact that Christian is more consistent over at the winning game. But yeah, with the jump start issue this evening, though, you know, how far do you push it? Do you go for that lightning start and risk that you'll be out of the race before it even gets going, or do you take it a little bit more cautiously? I hope they're all going to take it cautiously, Scott.
Well, let's see how they do take it as we're about to get the first of 2 races for our season finale tonight underway at Cadwell Park. The title is effectively between Christian and David on the front of the grid. Is anyone else going to try and spoil their party? Red lights are up for race number 1 of the evening here at Cadwell Park. They're out, and it's a pretty clean start for the first few rows. Just jumping out, I think, was Matt Larby from the 5th row of the grid as they head up towards turn 1 for the first time. And it is going to be side by side between Parker and Christian Szaruta, who will look to go around the outside, but Parker holds firm and holds the lead up to the right left-hander at Coppice. And now through Charlie's. One car's gone off in the background. It might be Freddie Chillick's. In fact, it is. I did see a black case from going off, so it is Freddie Chillick's out and down towards the back of the field. But out through the right-hander at Park Corner and up Park Straight for the first time. So out through Charlie's, up down Park Straight for the first time. It's Parker who leads, Chris Hutchinson in second place, Rowe is in third, Gallagher and Crawford round up the top 5 and up Park Straight towards Park Corner. Szaruta looks to the outside to try and make a switchback move on the run through this long, almost never-ending right-hander before the gooseneck. A little wide there from David Rowe, but I have to say impressively for the first few corners, apart from a little bit of a skirmish towards the back, really impressive start and defensive driving in the first few corners from Parker, holding the 2 championship contenders at bay and showing he's not afraid to get his elbows out and get himself right into the mix whilst these 2 scrap for the title.
Looked like Crawford there cutting across the grass. He had to take an escape route. Arnell there trying to get round his outside, but even with that slight cut, he still maintained that momentum. But yeah, Parker absolutely rock solid at the front, hasn't he? So that last lap ditch effort, really impressive in qualifying, and now he's looking to hold on to that advantage as we go over the mountain for the first time. You can see the cars get light, and then we head into Hall Bends here, a sort of single file sequence, but with the strange jump that we've got at the end. I'm sure some of our drivers will show us that nicely as we jump through here. But yeah, a really good opening lap from Parker, and actually opening a gap here ahead of Szaruta.
But out now through the right-hander at Barn, out to the hairpin, and David Ray getting a little sideways as he tries to put the power down. But Parker, as you mentioned, gets a really good run off the final corner, and he will lead the first racing lap of tonight's first 15-minute race out of 2 in this season finale for Season 5 of the caterhamracer.com Championship. So Parker leads, Szaruta second, then it's Rowe, Gallagher, Crawford, Lang, Jamie Peters, Dennis up to 7th. It's Curtis up from 12th to 8th. Really good first few places made up for Curtis from the 6th row of the grid up to inside the top 10. That's Coomber and Hopkins who round off those top 10 positions. We're on board with Richard Gallagher. He's got a toe up Park Straight towards Park Corner. And again, David Rowe sees that coming. Just quickly moves to the inside to try and put off any kind of an attack from Richard Gallagher behind. Now they come up to this long right-hand of Chris curve before they come towards the gooseneck, and they tumble downhill towards this very tricky braking side of Mansfield, where you're braking downhill. You have to brake a little bit harder than you would normally expect to do. Up through the gooseneck, 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. They put a bit of a gap over Guy Crawford and co. John Lang in 6th position. It's not the first time I made that mistake. And out of Mansfield, off this short little winding straight section towards the mountain. There's left and right and popping over the top of the hill. It looks as though we've got a quartet starting to pull away, trying to get away into 2 pairs. But I think Rowe's doing his best to try and keep with Szaruta, who in turn is trying to go with Parker here. But of course, David Rowe's having to work looking both directions, forwards to try and keep up with Szaruta, but behind him to keep Gallagher at bay. He was putting all sorts of pressure on him in these early stages.
Yeah, and Richard Gallagher's got 3 wins this year. He is not shy of the top step either. He's been really impressive. Had a year, other than a couple of bad results. I think we'd have seen him right there up in the championship, and still, depending on how tonight goes, that could still happen. That Guy Crawford mistake going down, I think it's towards Mansfield, cutting across the grass, really kind of did put that gap to everyone else, and they're going to struggle to get it back now with John Lang sort of following on, and then Peters Ennis in his own battle and ahead of Alan Curtis, who's sort of got a whole stream of cars with him.
Yeah, Curtis trying to hold off the likes of Coomber, Larby, Hopkins, Burr and Chiddick's behind. Chiddick's actually recovering already from the back of the field after his first corner spin. He's currently was in 17th, now up to 30 positions. Now it's side by side for the lead into Park Corner, but there goes through looking for the undercut up towards Chris Curve. So Szaruta purposely went to the outside line to force Parker to take that defensive inside run, which is a shorter run to the corner, but it's a much tighter run and therefore much slower run through the right-hander. This is where Szaruta has the advantage. He can drive the racing line. He's forcing Parker to come off the line in order to hold on. Meanwhile, behind David Rose possibly could lose 3rd place. He ran wide on the exit of the gooseneck. And up through Mansfield, it was very, very close for Richard Gallagher to squeeze through. So essentially, we've got 3 or 4. Essentially, the top 4 drivers have all, I think if I'm correct, won at least 1 race so far this season. I'm pretty sure Andy Parker has at some point this year. Sure, Chris will correct me in a second, but through the complex of the mountain, through the left and right, over the top of the hill, and now through this very tricky and undulating section called the Hall Beds. It's great to watch as a spectator in real life, but See these cars as they literally catch air over the crest. They wouldn't do that quite in real life, but in the sim here in the Assetto Corsa, they do like to catch a little bit of air. And now David Rowe's might start to pull a small bit of a gap now, Chris. Gallagher's got to do everything he can and work a little bit harder to keep in the tow. And that magic sort of half a second gap, which he's lost now. He's going to try and keep hold of it. Meanwhile, there has been a change for the lead, because Szaruta's got himself in front of Andy Parker now, and this is going to be crucial, particularly with Rowe struggling to try and keep Richard Gallagher at bay. He needs to try and put his foot down now in third place, because Christian, now he's got clear air, he's going to do nothing but sail away in the lead here.
Yeah, this is a dangerous position for David to be in now, and he's had to concentrate most of this race on defending rather than attacking. It's interesting that Christian waited until there was a nice little comfortable gap before he started making the attempt and move to the lead. That allowed him to make those moves without the risk of David getting right back on their tails. So kind of, again, we've said it before, he's an extremely tactical and wily character, and kind of knows all these tips and tricks, and he used Parker's extra speed there just to drag them away before making this move, and it looks currently like it might be decisive.
Parker, though, taking lots of curb on the inside of the gooseneck and actually running wide as a result, so he's not quite done yet. He's still pushing as hard as he dares to keep with Szaruta. Little twitch of oversteer there, and Szaruta just running over the grass a little bit might sort of help him out a little bit more. But get a bit more spread out in towards the bottom of the top 10. Alan Curtis is back in 8th position. We're just seeing here that Larby in 10th and Hopkins 11th. He's battling with Chris Burke, so Burke's going to try and pick up a couple more places here in the top 10. Not doing too badly for one of his first appearances in caterhamracer.com, as he currently sits in 11th place. So 12th place for Chris Burke. Hopkins in 11th, and of course Larby holding on to the final top 10 spot at the moment as they make their way again over the crest of the hill. And now up towards the end of another lap as they come towards the end of the first half of the race, and that's a spin for Michael Coomber. So around he goes in the what was 9th position, and Matt Larby takes an easy P9 as a result of that. So, and that's an easy thing to do. It's not a difficult thing to do there, particularly when the car runs so light, and the car that is so light and also has quite a high power to weight ratio. Just catching the jump and going a little bit too fast and carrying a bit too much speed over that crest can be the difference between nailing it and getting a great position to land pretty much square before you hit the brakes, and handing at quite a funny angle that just can unsettle the car too much to cause a problem and cause him to start spinning, as Michael experienced there, which has now pushed him down to 10th. Yeah,
it's not the first time we've seen it, and it certainly won't be the last even tonight. There will be people losing that, and actually, sometimes we've seen sort of movement in our sort of scoreboard that's showing on the left-hand side quite regularly, and I expect that that corner might well be responsible for quite a few of those.
So now watching the scrap for third still going on. We've still got David Rowe just trying to hold off Richard Gallagher as much as possible. And again, a couple of the cars at both the top two just running a little wide over the grass on the exit, just kicking up the dust, and they're just trying their best that they can. And I think what Rowe's trying to do now is, now that he's settled a little bit more into this first half of the race, through the second half, he's now got to try and see if he can either try and work together with Richard to push themselves forward back towards the top two, and whether or not he might be just sat here possibly losing points for third, and they'll rely on him essentially not only trying to win the race but also having results go his way in order to try and facilitate a potential steal back of his title chances. Because certainly it's advantage Szaruta with about 6 3/4 minutes to go as he continues to lead. It'll be his 7th win of the season if Szaruta can hold on here. But you have to say, I think the man that's really giving him more headaches is not exactly Richard David Rowe. It's the man that's just taken the fastest lap of the race, 1:37.609 for second place man, and pole sitter Andrew Parker. He is flying as hard as he's pushing as hard as he dares, and doing an incredible job keeping up with Christian Szaruta. This is great stuff from Andrew, who's certainly having a bit of his luck turn now. Touch wood, after he's had quite a tumultuous time throughout the season and in past couple of seasons. He really is coming on form now.
Yeah, and I do have to correct you from earlier. He hasn't had a win this season as it goes, but he has had plenty of podiums. So he's been twice on second place and 3 times on the third place step of the podium. So showing, I think a couple of times he has managed to lose the lead, and certainly I'm not sure whether that was this season or not, but he certainly gained a reputation at one point for not being able to hold his nerve, but that has certainly solved itself but before the end of this season, and then he does a great job regularly, and you can see here the fact that he is keeping up with Christian, who is regularly pulls away from everyone, and the fact that David is having struggles even trying to keep up is testament to the improvement.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's possibly some of it is down to the fact that Szaruta is the one that's having to try and keep him at bay and keep himself in front and resist the pressure. But speaking of pressure, David Rowe is not in a position where he really wants to be, which is trying to fend off a very feisty Richard Gallagher. And if they're not careful, Guy Crawford would also catch them up pretty quickly, because he's not too far away in the brighter orange Caterham behind in 5th position. There he is. And you just feel a little bit that David Rowe is driving a bit more defensively than he wants to, and the fact that he's having to keep on looking in his mirrors and keep on coming offline to prevent Richard from getting opportunities to get past, which will only see David lose a couple more points as Szaruta sets a new fast lap of the race to try and build the 1.2 second gap that he already has now. The more that he keeps on having to put his car offline and defend from Richard, all this is doing is benefiting Christian from trying to get himself even further in front as Parker keeps up his pursuit, and this won't help either through the right-hander at Park Corner. As Richard Gallagher looked up the inside, he tried to put himself level with David Rowe and corner exit, but again, Rowe's better momentum and keeping it off the green stuff, which is what Gallagher failed to do. He's now going to put him in the mix, as now Gallagher looks again to the outside line, and again, Rowe coming off the racing line to defend. It's only bringing Guy Crawford into the mix. This really is not working out for David on this first race.
No, he's having to work extremely hard, and I'm gonna call it. David Rowe puts a wheel on the grass. I think that is it through Chris Curve. He's going to lose that place now. I was just about to say Gallagher is definitely he's gone very deep round the outside there. That's extremely bold and amazing. That's effectively a championship protection role. He knows that he doesn't want to lose this extra space, and that was absolutely committed there, going down through the gooseneck and down towards Mansfield. Brilliant stuff. But yeah, that was really important, and Gallagher's actually given him a lot of sort of patience early in this race to allow him to, he hasn't shoved his nose down there and asked him to have an accident or not. He's been very careful and conscientious, and that's nice to see, especially when there is a championship at stake. But equally, Richard's involved in that championship, and he's got that extra speed, and I think we'll see him overtaking towards the end of this race.
Yeah, this really feels a bit like damaged imitation for David Rowe. Know that he's not quite on the same pace as Christian, and getting stuck between the cars around, stuck fighting with the cars around him. As Szaruta puts another new fastest lap in to extend his lap even further. Look at that, he was a full 3 seconds faster than Andy Parker on that lap alone, and everyone else is doing 1:39s, 1:40. It was a 1:37. It was qualifying pace for Christian Szaruta, who is absolutely charging at the moment. This, I don't want to use the typical phrase in this situation, but this is really starting, at least in this first race alone, to become something of almost, if you like, dare I say, a champion's drive, because he really has pulled the gap up to 4.3 seconds, and the fact he's lapping that much quicker than everyone else around him, at least 2 seconds quicker than everyone else. I mean, this is surely him driving purely to get himself to secure that championship and trying to put one hand on it before this race is over. Whilst David Rowe here, Chris, of course, is just trying to survive and keep himself in the championship hunt at all, when he's got both Gallagher and Crawford relentlessly just putting on attack after attack. And all David can do here is try and sit and just try and hold back the tide, because the more that he tries to push and to come take his racing line, both Richard and Guy are both there to keep putting on the pressure, and this really isn't the way that David wants to start his evening in this first race. He's got a lot of work to do to try and hope the results go his way.
Yeah, if you take a win on the series, you get 50 points, and second place is 48. So there's a 2-point gap between the lead and second place, and there's only a 1-point gap between all other places. So obviously, with Andrew there taking the 48, that means it's 47 for David, and that's quite a few points less than Christian's going to be gaining. So it's definitely advantage Christian at this early stage. But we have got a whole other race to go. We've still got 2 minutes of this race to go for him to try and defend from both Richard and Guy. And they're I guess one advantage of Guy having caught up now is that Richard at least is going to have to concentrate on his mirrors a little bit more, and that might give David a little bit more breathing room. Yeah,
a little bit of a spike now for David Rowe in third position. He's now trying, and now finally, now he's not defending and putting the car down the middle of the road. Now he can finally pick the pace up a little bit more. He can start to just relax a little bit more and start to put in a couple more quicker lap times here. So he can start to lap at the pace that he wants to lap, because as you absolutely correctly pointed out, Chris, Richard Gallagher now is so focused on Guy Crawford and defending from him for fourth place. He's gone from the hunter to the hunted at this point. So keep an eye on that one as they go side by side up the hill towards Park Corner. And this time Crawford is going to show Gallagher how it's done. Right, you want to go up the inside, this is how you do it. Or maybe not. I spoke too soon there, but there's a little bit of contact between them, and looks like Crawford was the one that came off worse on that one. In fact, and he, I think, has gone completely round. So he's unfortunately, I genuinely spoke too soon. That's one for the blooper really at the end of the season, isn't it? So Crawford then goes back down to 7th. I was about to mention before, whilst that was happening, we should probably check in on the battle that's going on behind him, because we've got John Lang here and a great battle going on with Jamie Peters Ennis. He's up now to 6th position, so he could potentially squeeze into the top 5 here if he can find a way around John in these last pretty lap and a half here. And Guy Crawford has got back going again. He's now battling with Larby now in 9th position. And I should also mention as well that sadly Freddie Chiddick's had the spin. He was as high as 13th at one point looking at the table, but for whatever reason he's had his own mishaps, whether it's with somebody else or by himself. And he's now down to 17th and last on the road right now, so 17 seconds behind Chris Burr in P16, just ahead of him. So not quite a great start to Freddie Chiddick this evening, but as Christian Szaruta now goes on to the final lap of the race, at the moment, it really is just advantage Christian at this point in time. There's Chris Burr. As you see Christian now make his way up through Coppice and into Charlie's for the final time. And right now for him, even though he's only going to take 3 points out of David Rowe at this point, if he can hold on to where he is, he's got a 1.2 second advantage now over Richard Gallagher at this point, so he can relax just a little bit more. But Christian now will take a 3-point advantage on drop scores into the final race, and it really will be at this point in time Christian's to lose with that small advantage.
Yeah, sort of processing serenely along, isn't he? He's again, just after a little bit of early pressure from Andrew, he hasn't been able to sustain that for the whole race, and David now got a little, just again touching the grass. He's living dangerously, isn't he? A little bit of comfort zone there, just ahead of Richard Gallagher, who's circulating 4th. It looks like these first few places are settled, but the battle for 5th and 6th is definitely not. Lang was sort of on the tail of Guy Crawford at one point, but he's sort of slipped back, and Jamie Peter Dennis has reeled him in. Looks like at the moment he's got that kind of covered off, but we're coming into the final few corners. There's not many more overtaking opportunities, but when you want to make a move, there's chances.
He's trying to take his chance wherever he can as he heads up towards the complex of the mountain for the final time. But into the hairpin, and the whole bends for one last time in this first race. This man who's taken 6 wins already is about to add 1 more to make it 7 for the season, and effectively almost put one hand on the title, but it won't be over until he gets the checkered flag in race 2. It's a checkered flag in race 1 though, and it goes out for Christian Szaruta, who picks up victory in the first race of the evening in this tonight's finale of season 5 of caterhamracer.com. Andy Parker should be delighted with a brilliant second place after a great battle at the front of the field. David Rowe will probably curse only coming home in 3rd place, but again, his silver lining will be he's only lost 3 points. There's only 3 points plus more that he can do to try and claw back to at least get himself still with a chance of the title. 4th for Richard Gallagher. It's then 5th for John Lang. 6th for Jamie Peter Dennis, one of his best results in the 420 yards. And it's Guy Crawford who recovers to 7th after that small spin after the light contact was battling with Gallagher. It's then 8th for Alan Curtis, 9th for Larby, 10th for Coomber, and then the rest of the field comes through across the line. Pernerhuff from Hooker, McEwing and Hopkins were side by side across the line. McEwing just beating Hopkins to the line. And it's Burr. Steve Arnell, who really didn't have a great run either. He dropped right the way down to 16th place. And then Freddie Chiddick will be the last car across the line in 17th and last. And he will rue what could have been as well after his race essentially was put to a premature halt. And his chance of a strong result were taken away right at the first corner. But he still comes home in 17th place, and he will try and redeem himself from the back of the grid for race number 2. So first race is complete, and let's just also clarify the provisional results. So Christian Szaruta then now takes the championship lead by 3 points, we reckon, now going to the final race of the season and of the evening. Andy Parker takes a strong 2nd place, 7 seconds back. David Rowe had to spend race long defending from Richard Gallagher, but he finally managed to do it, get a break, and secure that final podium place. He's got it all to do now in this final race coming up shortly. Richard Gallagher 4th, John Lang 5th. He defended race long for Jamie Peter Dennis, particularly in the second half of that event, but now JPE managed to pick up one of his best results with P6, and it's Guy Crawford, Alan Curtis, Matt Larby, and Michael Coomber running up the top 10, and Paul Pernerhuff, Ryan Hooker, Tom McEwing, Graham Hopkins, Chris Burr, Steve Arnell, and Freddie Chiddick will have been much aggrieved after he spun out at Coppice on the first lap after the start. So as we now make the brief transition into the second race with a minute and a half to go, essentially, I think if I'm correct, Chris, this pretty much now is arguably, in terms of the points, Christian's to lose, but of course at the same time, given the fact that there are no points to drop for either Christian or David, it's by no means certain, of course, going into it. So this is now going to be a case of Christian's going to be under pressure, so is David, but I think possibly Christian will be more under pressure than David will, because he's got that small lead to defend, knowing that both can't drop any more scores and they have to drop zeros. If it's one small slip-up, one small mistake from either of them, it is going to be their chances for the championship completely gone, because it will mean that whoever slips up and drops down the order, unless they can recover quick enough, it's going to be theirs to lose.
Yeah, I am going to try something which I'm probably going to fail at, which is do some multitasking during this next race to try and work out some of the scenarios that could come into play. Basically, we've seen Christian now sort of creeping well up the scoreboard as his drop scores sort of take that another win in the bag. As long as he does actually get a good scoring result in this race, I think he's looking really good for the race result. Certainly David has a lot of work to do now after having only finished third in that last race. I mean, third is a brilliant result, isn't it? But it just wasn't enough given the situation, and it just leaves, even if he wins now, I think he's going to find that tough, because if Christian gets to second place, he's obviously guaranteed that win. Even if they tie on scores, Christian has got plenty more wins in the bag this season, so that gives him sort of a couple of advantages, really. So we'll keep an eye out for that as we go through. But yes, I am going to try my best to multitask a touch, and that could all go wrong, but bear with us.
Given that I've got to do that as well for upcoming championships like Fiestas and Masters and other championships which involve drop scores as well, I feel the pain of having to try multitask. I'm probably going to have to do that next weekend, probably with the Fiestas, essentially trying to multitask, putting in points for the main contenders whilst also commentating on their races. So that's going to be one quite of a task. And who says that men can't multitask when we try stuff like that? So, by my calculation then, again, if the fact they've got no points to drop, essentially what they're scoring is what they will give them, given that Christian outscored David by 3 points there, given it was 50 points for Christian and 47 for David, that kind of says to me that if David Rowe wins, as long as Christian is third or better, that should give him the title by enough. But I think if he's fourth or better, if I'm correct, I think if fourth or worse for Christian and David wins, I think that actually swings it back in David's favour and gives it him by at least a point. Am I sort of on the same along the right lines there?
Yeah, it looks like if David wins the race, Christian has to just finish third, and he will still take it because they will be absolutely tied on drop scores, and so therefore the tie break goes to Christian. So basically, David has to win it, and Christian has to finish lower than third to make this happen. Yeah.
So that means you'll have to wish for not such great opening corners, and it's pretty much a reverse of what we had on the front row of the grid. But David Rowe's back on that right-hand side. So now time to decide a champion. Is it Christian or is it David, or will someone else possibly steal their thunder? The final 15 minutes of racing for Season 5 of caterhamracer.com at Cadwell Park, all set to get underway. Who's going to take the title as you make the sprint down towards Coppice for the first time? Lights out for one last time, and it's all a decent start for the first few rows. They all scrambled away pretty cleanly. Now we saw there's a couple of cars that got involved with each other into Coppice in the first run, but into the left-hander for the first time, and Rowe is immediately up the inside of Parker. He needs to be able to get right onto the tail of Christian as they're turning to the right-hander at Charlie's. It's a double apex right-hander. Up to the top of the corner, there's contact already. He's made contact with Andy Parker, and David Rowe gets onto the grass, saves it. How on earth did he save that? It was a tag with Andy Parker going side by side, but Rowe's already compromised. He's down to fourth. It's 2-3 abreast behind him. We've got the likes of Crawford, Lang, McEwing getting involved. JP Zen's up to fifth as well. There's a car on the grass. It's John Lang who keeps his foot in, but David Rowe just about survives what could have been an absolute disaster and the end of his championship chances there and then. He's back in fourth, and of course it means as it stays right now, it's going to be Szarutas' title. We've still got 14 and a quarter minutes to go, but that is absolutely, Chris, this is understatement of the year, that is not the way that David wanted to start his championship final race.
No, he felt he had to hold on around the outside there with Andrew on the inside, didn't he? He knew that was going to be crucial in this early couple of corners, but Andrew absolutely was having none of it, and they both went for the same bit of tarmac, and around the outside there it clipped him into an oversteer moment, and we didn't get a brilliant angle of it, but it certainly looked epic from where we were, didn't it? It was smoke everywhere, and Peter Zennis clipping the curb there. It was unfortunate. He really sort of kicked his car in an unusual way. Again, David again losing it through Hall Bends as well. He's really, really pushing. He's a bit flustered, isn't he? As we see all the cars launching themselves through the end of Hall Bends there as they come to the end of their first lap.
Just needs to just relax and calm down a little bit, because he knows, of course, he's in a position where he potentially is at the moment. The title is not going to go to him, so he has to try and keep going as much as he can. Now, Parker didn't get a great run out of the final corner there, so at the end of the first lap, Rowe's all over him. He's going to try and put himself to the inside to try and make a move into Coppice corner. He has to keep moving and making these daring passes. Now, it looks like Parker, rather than try and fight it, because he knew exactly what happened right here a lap ago at the start, he's at least possibly capitulated a little bit more and thought, right, rather than make contact, I'll let you through at this point in time, and if I can catch you on pace, then we'll go again. So Rowe then is back into third place, but again, it's all elemental at the moment because, of course, it's Christian Szaruta who still now leads by quite a gargantuan 1.8 seconds already by the end of this opening lap. And now, of course, what Rowe needs is the cars behind to start battling amongst each other, which is exactly what they're doing. Shout out, actually, to Tom McEwing. Strong start from him. He's up to P5, having a battle with Parker, with Crawford, Peter Zennis and Lang not too far behind. Peter Zennis actually already is ahead of John Lang at this point already now, so he's managed to get himself ahead this time. It's roles reversed and positions reversed on track between the two of them, so if Jamie can stay there, there's a good chance he might get one of his better results of the season and get himself ahead of John and put one over him, possibly as a bit of a bragging right going into the off-season for Season 6.
Yeah, so a couple of points. So David Rowe's car is clearly looking like a kicking donkey at the moment. People are absolutely steering clear of him, letting him go and letting him do his own thing because he is coming through no matter what. And McEwing, as you pointed out, he started 13th on the grid and he's now in 5th. He has been a perennial front runner throughout the season, so he must have had an uncomfortable first race. Didn't see exactly how he got caught out, but yeah, Andrew Parker absolutely letting David Rowe go there, but I don't think there was going to be a choice in it. Like I say, kicking donkey is the best description.
The challenge here is that Rowe in clear air has got to not only try and capture Richard Gallagher, but if he does start to bring Parker and McEwing and co with him, to try not to let them have an opportunity to get through, because also again, as we saw in race 1, the longer he gets caught up with the cars around him trying to defend and battle for position, the more it hurts his chances of possibly trying to get the title. There might well be a point in this race where he's a bit more resigned and thinks, right, well, I know that Christian's quite far ahead by a few seconds, I may as well drive for the result. Just hope either it goes my way or just settle for second place, because Christian, of course, is simply just driving like he always does, driving flat out, driving at the pace he needs to be at in order to get this championship wrapped up. As we watch them head up through Park Corner and in through Chris Curves, and almost never-ending multiple apex right-hander before the drop of the gooseneck. Now the key challenge, of course, is for Rowe to try and pull away from these two and to start to close the gap to Gallagher in front of him. We switch on board with Tom McEwing as he flicks through the gooseneck right and left, and then all the way down the hill towards this constant downhill braking. So very tricky. You have to really stand on the anchors to get the car stopped, because that momentum down the hill will certainly make it much trickier for you to do so. And now up through the gears again to Mansfield, just moving around in the mirrors of Parker down towards the complex of the mountain, back down the sequential box down to third gear. Just hug the first part of the complex to set the car up for the second part, over the crest, a little bit of air, and then up towards the Hall bends. Turns his way in, goes right and then left, watches the circuit just curve around, slight jump over the crest, and then just all the way into this very tight right-hander at the hairpin, just watching both Parker and Rowe battling with each other. Rowe has the pace, but Parker looks as though he's able to keep with him at least and just try and put him under a bit more pressure. McEwing doing a grand job from 13th on the grid to 5th, so at the moment it's all the cards are being held by Szaruta at this point. Rowe, all he can do at the moment is run at the pace he is and try and hope that Gallagher comes back towards him and he can possibly try and shake off the cars behind, but right now it really is essentially at the moment Christian's to lose, and there's nothing more than David can do than just drive as hard as he can without making a mistake and hope that things go his way.
Yeah, and he's got a, as long as he stays in this battle, he's got a sort of a locked-in second place in the championship. But equally, Andrew is looking alongside him. Oh, again, there's a lot of squeezing going on there, David. Eventually, Andrew missing his braking point. I thought it was David letting him go, but actually Andrew missed his braking point. He was on the grass, and that's fired Andrew off, and actually is going to have big championship connotations from Andrew's point of view. David looking absolutely feisty, and whether we're going to see, we always call provisional results, don't we? And that's because we do have a appeals process as you have in real life, so we include that as part of our service. So if someone feels like they've been wronged in any way, they can have a subject to recourse. So things are always provisional until we see whether anything comes of that.
Well, hopefully there's nothing too untoward comes of any appeal process from this final race, but now it's Tom McEwing to start putting Rowe under pressure. That seems to be the theme for Rowe tonight, is that he just doesn't have a moment to relax in terms of it's not necessarily him putting the pressure on others, it's others putting the pressure on him, and now it's first been Richard Gallagher, then it's Guy Crawford, now it's Tom McEwing having a go. Oh, and a bump in the rear of David Rowe's not going to help him either. It's not going to help McEwing's momentum either. It's now up the inside. Look, Richard Gallagher, Guy Crawford, and the two make contact through the right-hander at Barn. I think just out of courtesy, Guy Crawford, who probably was trying to make a move up the inside and Tom just shut the door, is now just courtesy letting him back through, because of course if he had gone through, that would have been gaining an unfair advantage for Guy. So he sits back and tries to look for an opportunity to get back around him again for fourth place. Watch for the car behind them, because James Peter Zennis, who's pulled away from John Lang, is now into sixth position and actually has a genuine chance of these two keep on battling of getting himself into the top five and possibly as high as fourth, and that'll be one of his best results of the season. We talk about him looking pretty strong in the top 5 and top 10 places, and the fact that the two cars ahead are going side by side, that will certainly help his cause if he wants to get himself into the top 5 to round off what's been a pretty strong second half of the season. Yeah,
it would be great to get a top 5, wouldn't it? A nice result. He's been sort of there or thereabouts on a number of race evenings so far, so to see that come off would be really good. We're still seeing here the kind of toing and froing of the cars. We've seen how difficult it is to get past here. It's just a slightly narrower track, and sometimes the opportunity presents like it did going down the Hall Bends, but there's just nowhere for you to actually use that. He's touching the grass on the exit there. He's flirting with danger. Now he's got it all to do again, and here comes Jamie Peters-Ennis looking to close up and maybe make the best of that.
Yeah, mistake from Guy Crawford. He was trying to hold on getting past Tom McEwing. That in itself has brought Jamie Peters-Ennis right back into it now in 6th position. He might get a really good chance of securing that top 5 spot. Here's Steve Arnell, who's been a bit sort of off the pace in this final weekend. He's now currently sat in 9th behind Matt Larby as they come up through the Hall Bends for the umpteenth time. We've still got the second half of the race to go, so just under 7 minutes to go in this point in time. Alan Curtis, meanwhile, has not had a great run. It looks like his final race will end with him being a lap down, which is unfortunate to see after he had such a good a high at Snetterton, being up towards the front in real life, but not quite the end of his virtual campaign for season 5 that he wanted. Back out of in front, Szaruta leads still by 3.5 seconds. It's a further 3.8, almost 4 seconds to David Rowe. So I think at this point in time, it's very much looking like provisionally, at this point, if it stays as it is, game, set and match for the championship for Szaruta. But as I said, Rowe needs some divine intervention or some kind of a time penalty for Szaruta, or something that hinders him, that gives him some kind of a chance to get back in the mix. But it looks like Szaruta, he really is his title to lose, and all Rowe can do is drive as hard as he can and just hope that something comes his way. Otherwise, it looks as though it's going to be win number 8 and the title for Christian in these next few minutes.
Yep, quick shout out to Matt Larby here, sort of leading Steve Arnell. He's entering the Caterham Academy for real next year, so great result. He's sort of joined us in the last few rounds of this series. But equally, Tom McEwing is due to take part in the Academy next year, so the really good things. There's some really good racecraft on a presentation from both of them, and they're going to be heading strongly into the next year's Academy. So we'll look forward to watching how that all develops on track for real. But yeah, Christian Szaruta, again, we always say if you don't see him on stream, it means he's doing all the right things in all the right places. It's kind of spread out at the front there, which is why we're kind of concentrating on a few of these midfield battles where they're flying through that Hall Bends. I really hope it's not like that in a couple of weekends' time when we're there for real, because that's going to be extremely scary. But yeah, Christian doing all the right things, all the right places, and pulling away with this one.
Yeah, if Tom McEwing does get some strong results in the Academy next year, I think we can take the bragging rights that we told him all he knew after his season's worth of sim race. He's done a couple of seasons, in fact, because we've managed to cram about 2 or 3 into 1 year in caterhamracer.com throughout the 2021 campaign. But running well in one of his best evenings so far in 4th position, so one to watch out for, not just in the next few seasons next year, but of course, as we say, in next year's Caterham Academy. So definitely watch out for him on the racetracks for real in his first real racing season. Here's Andy Parker after his escapade onto the grass after he tried to outbrake David Rowe and went shooting off at Park Corner, trying to get back up the inside of Chris Burke, and he almost makes contact as he bangs wheels, goes side by side with Chris, and better momentum off the corner means that he can just get his nose in front and complete the move any moment now. Under brakes for Park, a little bit more confident. Chris tries to go back at him, and just a little puff of smoke as he locks the inside front, but Parker's got the move done, and now as they turn out through Chris Corner, it's up into its 12th position. His next target's Freddie Chiddicks, who's down in 11th place. Hasn't really made the progress he wanted to after he started towards the back. If he can pick up one more place, it will be a top 10 spot for Freddie. And Andy, of course, looking again, damage limitation for him, not the result he would have wanted, but again, he can be proud of everything he's achieved this year, putting in some strong results, and hasn't quite managed to win yet, but that will come in time. But as for victories, this man certainly has plenty of them in abundance. He already has 7 for the season, including the first one tonight. He's on course for an 8th. And the way he's driving, Chris, effectively, there is simply no stopping Christian. Be handy if he can get back into Caterham for real, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely in his future. He's certainly looking to do that. Again, life sometimes gets in the way. Annoying things like getting married and also then and obviously the lockdown for everybody as well. But yeah, it'd be good and really good to see him back out in a car for real. He's certainly got all the chops, hasn't he? And yet to win a championship on an actual real track, but showing here that he absolutely, given the opportunity, would be able to do that.
Yeah, and he has been a championship contender and race winner many times before in real life, so certainly the way he's been able to handle himself and transfer all his ability into the sim has been quite evident over the last few seasons, and so he's now managed to put all the ingredients together to be able to show Casey's talents with a virtual Caterham. And I think there's no doubt that because I think we're confident that it will happen, when he gets back behind the wheel of one for real, he will certainly just remind everyone exactly how good he is, and this is a good way to do so in the virtual sense. Got almost a 5-second advantage over Richard Gallagher already, and Richard having a strong run too. Of course, he's been a race winner this year, but he'll definitely take a second place to go into the off-season for whatever format Season 6 will take. Over the crest of the mountain, a little bit of oversteer as the car went very light, squirreling around for traction, and just flings the car through the hall bends. The way it just winds and leans its way through, leaps over the crest into the hairpin. And now with just a couple of laps to go now, 2 more laps of the season left. David Rowe is 3.8 seconds back, and I think at this point, Chris, given that he's third and as far behind as he is, as Christian Szaruta puts in another fast lap of the race, just for good measure out in front, I think pretty much for David, I think he's now resigned to the fact that it's going to have to be second best in the runner-up spot, but third place for him, and it's still second ever championship. It's still, again, make no mistake, a very strong run. He's had a couple of wins this year. I think while he'd be a bit frustrated having to lost out, he'd still be proud of the fact he's managed to get towards the front, and it will still be a DPR 1-2 anyway, so that's a silver lining too.
Yeah, he's again just a really good season all year, and we've had some absolutely brilliant battles between himself and Christian, and tonight he just seems to be lacking, or Christian had that extra couple of tenths. We did pre-qualifying yesterday, and he's beaten with the fastest lap in these races those pre-qualifying times, so it's pretty impressive from Christian here. Again, just not really making a mistake, not putting a foot wrong. Excuse the commentator curse if that does happen, but yeah, everyone this season has really stepped up, and we watched Richard Gallagher there for a bit, and he's got 3 wins under his belt this year, so he made absolute full advantage when David and Christian weren't here, but even when they have been here, he was ready to pick up all the pieces, and you could see by his sort of patience tonight following David, it paid off, because he's now running in that second place with another set of really strong results, and he's going to have a really strong championship finish.
Certainly will, as will this man. He leaps his way over the crest into the hairpin, and now he will start the final lap, not just the race and of the evening, but of the season, will Christian, with just about 20 odd seconds to go. He turns his way out of barn and now fires it onto the pit straight to start the last lap, and again, Christian proving all of his worth, and as he carries on, but there's still battles going on right at the end of the season. Now, Guy Crawford wants to get one over Tom McEwing here, who in turn, he also wants to try and hold on to get one of his best results of the season with 4th place. Across the line they go, so there's also a battle going on. As I mentioned, that John Lang has re-caught Jamie Peters-Ennis. That gap's gone down to 1.2 seconds, but thankfully Lang's not in the slipstream at this point in time, and Lang's only about 1/10 of a second quicker, so looks as though, I think, bar any mishaps on the last lap, Jamie will hold on for P6. There's David Rowe, who will race on to secure the runner-up spot in the championship. Just hasn't been his night tonight, has it? In terms of he's been up there as one of the faster guys, but ultimately, when the ultimate pace needed to come towards him, just getting caught up in too many battles and one too many mishaps.
Dare I say a little bit desperate, Scott? A little bit. Maybe urging to war. Maybe that's a bit unfair, but yeah, it certainly looked like he needed to find a couple of tenths that he just didn't have in the locker tonight.
Desperate, Dave? Surely not. But even so, I think he's put up a valiant effort all season and really taken the fight to Christian. Richard will certainly be happy with the way he's rounding off the season, certainly want to watch for Season 6. He will definitely want to keep on improving in the off-season, keep on practicing, get his pace up, and watch out, of course, we'll have the likes, I'm sure, of, if they return, Tom McEwing and Guy Crawford and Richard, of course, on top of that, Andy Parker as well. But whilst everyone's been trying to get ahead of everyone else to get the points they need, there's been no stopping this man indeed. He comes out the final corner. It will be his 8th win of the season, but the one that gives him the ultimate prize. Out of the final corner, he weaves with delight because he knows what it means. Christian Szaruta is the Season 5 caterhamracer.com champion. He does it in perfect style with a brilliant brace here at the final rounds, and he takes the title in fine style. Richard Gallagher delighted with a 2nd place. David Rowe resided with 3rd, but a valiant effort nonetheless. A charge to the line for 4th. It's Tom McEwing who just holds on against Guy Crawford. And in the battle for 6th, his position's reversed. It's Jamie Peters-Ennis who this time does hold off John Lang. He's happy with 7th too. Arnell picks up 8th. Andy Parker recovers to... Larby recovers to 9th after he put in a strong performance. And then Mike Coomber just denies Andy Parker a top 10 finish as Andrew picks up P11. It's 12th for Fernehoff. And then it's Hooker, Chiddix who recovers to 14th. Hopkins and Berber, last 2 cars that will make it across the line. Alan Curtis, who retired early on. But we can say that at least provisionally, bar any other results and investigations, the Christian Szaruta is the Season 5 champion for caterhamracer.com, and he did it in the best possible way, Chris. A double victory. And again, we can truly say this. It's a cliche thing to say, but genuinely, tonight, the drives of a champion. Brilliant stuff from Christian all through tonight. And genuinely, I don't think, put a wheel wrong anywhere.
No, it just looked dominant, didn't it? And annoyingly so, I'm sure, for the other drivers as well. But he had the pace, and he was patient at the beginning, waited for Andrew to pull a little gap before he started making his battles, and then off he went. He made the move and left a clean pair of heels, didn't he? So yeah, really good stuff. And Richard Gallagher, Andrew Parker, David Rowe, Tom McEwing, they've all played such a strong part in the entirety of this season. You know, they've always been there or thereabouts, and certainly made things epic. But yeah, big shout out to all the other drivers, not just on the A grid, but on the B grid. It's been absolutely brilliant to see them all making steps up and all having their own sort of stories and battles and whatever. So yeah, thank you to all the drivers who make this what it is. Yeah.
Couldn't help but echo that, and it's been another amazing season, of course. So I'd probably argue, I think, the most competitive that it's been, because, of course, it keeps on year getting more and more competitive as more and more drivers find their pace and get more practice in and move further towards the front. And it's always great to see them keep on progressing as they do. But again, incredible stuff from everyone, and I guess we should round up before we get to our final post-race, and I guess even post-season interviews, with our final results of the season. So, champion Christian Szaruta crowns off his title win with the perfect victory at the front. He wins by 6.3 seconds. Richard Gallagher, a very strong second place, and one absolutely to watch for next year. And David Rowe, who will be very frustrated, but at least can still take some comfort in the silver line that he is runner-up, and second is definitely not to be sniffed at either. Tom McEwing, again, another one to watch, not just in virtual, but in real life as well, and best of wishes, best of luck to him for his 2022 Academy campaign that we're coming up next year. Guy Crawford finishes in P5. JPZ continuing to improve in the second half of the season. He takes 6th position. John Lang's been getting steadily better. He takes 7th. Steve Arnell's been there or thereabouts most times. He picks up P8, but he's been high throughout the pack. Matt Larby, Mark Kukumba, they'll definitely be delighted with top 10 finishes to round off their partial seasons. Andy Parker, he'll have wanted more from this second race, but again, managed to put it on pole and getting in the mix and get a second place in that first race will be confidence boost to him. And again, he's another one that you've got to count him for top contention in season 6 and beyond. Paul Fernhoff in 12th, Ryan Hooker 13th. Freddie Chiddicks, if he's around next year, he'll be one to also keep on developing, as will, of course, Graham Hopkins, Chris Burr and Alan Curtis. And just as quick as they come, Chris, the season's over. But again, lots more great battles. The evergreen slugfest at the front between Christian Szaruta and David Rowe, and all the Ford's wheel scraps that they've had. Even one or two awkward comings together. I think Silverstone probably best left not remembered so much by the DPR boys. But even so, an amazing season, an amazing battle at the front. Amazing to see so many drivers make so much progress throughout the season. And above it all else, Chris, I think an amazing but very well much deserved champion in Christian Szaruta.
Yes, and you know, I have to say that at times this year, commentating on the virtual racing, that you know, it has been as real as it gets. We kind of do our virtual rounds just slightly before the real world rounds, and some of the racing on show has, you know, absolutely mirrored what happens in real life. A particular highlight for me being Brands Hatch was just, you know, it just reminded me exactly as when I sit on the banks or in the grandstand or even take part in those races. It's just exactly how that comes across. So congratulations to all the drivers for making that happen, and you know, we're trying to make these things as real as we can, and that helps me put on and put this thing together.
And I think everyone involved, driving-wise, would agree, as I'm sure I'll hopefully echo their sentiments, is that another fine season, another fine job, Chris, as always, for putting it on for not just the drivers who race in Caterham for real, but also those who have found a place to race against them and be part of this great little community. So, yeah, I guess if they haven't said it already, I'm sure they have several times, but I guess for me, on behalf of them, again, thanks for your fantastic efforts, Chris, for putting it together once more. And I'm sure I echo everyone else to say, roll on season 6 and beyond, because these cars keep on developing, they keep on building, they keep on getting tweaked and tuned up by, of course, Jaroslav and Bonobo in the background. A big thank you to them as well, of course, for all the efforts they put in and taking all the feedback from all our drivers and making these cars even better and even more authentic and more realistic to the real life cars. Fantastic effort from everyone involved, and making it a fantastic little series that hopefully, for those who discover it, will come in and try and make it bigger and better with more and more eyes on it going forwards. I think for the final time, Chris, time for you to do your best Martha Brundle impression, have a wander down the virtual pit lane, have a chat to some of our top drivers, including, of course, our newly crowned champion, Christian Szaruta. So for the final time, let's see what these guys have got to say for each other, and I'm sure there'll be hopefully some entertaining quips to round off what's been a competitive night and a competitive Season 5 for caterhamracer.com. So let's see who has to say what about 2021's 5th season of action.
We'll try and do it in that kind of reverse order style. And Andrew, have you got us in the pit box?
Evening, chaps.
I can see you sitting there in your car in the virtual world. I think I said at one point that David Rowe's car looked like it was a kicking donkey, and really it was best avoided. And it looks like in the second race that's ultimately a bit of contact and at the end of your race.
Yeah, I don't think it was a big deal. I think David was looking at the apex and just drifted left a little bit, and then I had too many things to think about and not enough brain power to process them all. And by the time I hit the grass and I tried to brake, they didn't work particularly well.
Still a second place, a really strong second place in the first race, if I've got that right. And you know, you looking best of the rest. I don't think anyone was catching Christian tonight, but certainly you looked really good.
No, I gave him quite a bit of pressure for a few laps. I was sort of within half a second, but never really challenging. But I was on the ragged edge to stay within half a second of him. So I think that's sort of testament to him, which, you know, is a
annoying,
hard thing to say, but it's true.
And I think that gives you. I think that does mean you are third in the championship overall. These are all provisional, subject to my bad Excel formulas and all sorts. So, and you know that obviously says and shows what a consistent year you've had.
Yeah, it's been really good, and thank you for you chaps, specifically you Cheesy, keeping this going and putting it on. It's been really good fun.
No problem at all, and look forward to seeing you in future races.
All right, cheers, guys. Good night.
All right, let's just going to grab, if I can, give everyone a bit of limelight that's been on the podiums tonight. And Richard Gallagher, have you got us in the commentary box? Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Very good. Another strong evening for yourself. Another strong evening in what's been a really strong season, but for a couple of rounds with early doors where there was problems. What a race, and certainly in that second one, bring it home in second.
Yeah, I'm still a bit focused on what happened with Guy in the first one, to be honest. If that was my fault, I feel really bad about it. If not, oh well. But it was so difficult because I was really trying to pressure David, but he was impossible to get past. And then Guy started catching up with us, and I didn't know to defend or attack or what at that point.
It's again, it's all for the post race and whatever. I think overall it looked reasonable on our screen, so I don't think I saw anything particularly desperate going on. So yeah, like you say, just an unfortunate incident, but I wouldn't let that mire what has been, especially given how consistent and fair you were. Certainly at the beginning of the race with David in race one, you were very patient with him.
Yeah, well, there's no point trying something silly, and he was in contention for the championship. I didn't really want to mess that up, but he was a bit off the pace here. I think in the first race I could have mixed it a bit more with Christian and Andrew at the earlier part. Hats off to Christian though. The consistency and the speed he had throughout the whole event was just incredible. I couldn't really match that at all, unfortunately, but I really enjoyed the second race. Got a bit of space and just managed to enjoy myself.
And your car looking resplendent on screen now. It's a really fantastic paint job, and we're looking forward to seeing more of that in the coming seasons, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully I've made a bit of a step up and can mix it up the front a bit more often.
I think that's exactly what will happen, so we'll look forward to that and speak to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Okay, it's time to bring in David Rowe. Hopefully, David, you've got us in the commentary box.
I have you.
So it's I think I used the word desperate at one point to describe what the attitude of the car on track was. It did look like you were struggling with the final couple of tenths, but you tried to maximise, and it just wasn't to be tonight, was it?
No, I mean, the harder you push, the slower you go, and so I kind of was not in a good place in terms of how I was driving and going backwards, and it was only really until the last few laps of race 2 that I managed to get some kind of pace back again. So overall, a bit of a disaster. Disaster's probably strong. It's certainly, I think even had you been at the front, it would
there weren't many people that were going to stop Christian tonight. He was on one, wasn't he? Sadly for everyone else. But a strong second place in the championship, and overall, that's not a bad result.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I've got to say, Christian had some absolutely mentally good pace towards the back end of the season as well. He's really kind of got to grips with it, and with his rig and the 420R as well. So he's going to be difficult to beat. But yeah, no, it's been good. As I said, the racing for me this weekend, these last two races were a bit scrappy, and apologies to Andrew Parker, because I think I was reviewing the replays and I've not driving at my best. So that was a bit disappointing. But actually, the whole year's been great.
Great stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to join us for season 6 when we get underway, sort of maybe later over the winter period. Absolutely, yeah, for sure. You guys done an absolutely fantastic job. We've had some great races. I think Brands Hatch was a real one to see the complete similarity between real life. And it's brilliant. So if you can be up the front and there's some clean racing, it's definitely true to life. Really good. I didn't pay you to say that, but I meant the same point a bit earlier. So echoing what I felt about Brands Hatch. It was a brilliant race and one that we're proud of. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you for more of the same next season. Superb. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Great job.
And then finally, last but certainly by no means least, we've got Christian. Have you got us in the commentary box?
Hello.
That is a pretty spectacular way to end the season. Absolutely full pressure. You couldn't afford to have a bad result, and you didn't.
Well, I was just saying to David that I feel like tonight was a culmination of all the events throughout my entire life leading me to beat David. That was what it felt like.
I mean, I guess after such a momentous occasion, then you've got to refocus and work out what your next goal in life's going to be. Maybe, for example, getting back in one of these cars for real and actually doing this.
But apparently there's a cheap one for sale coming up. So
See, it makes sense that you got to go and do it now. Now that you've thought about it, Chris, you got to go and do it. You've committed yourself now on live broadcast that you've got to go and buy that car.
Yeah, well, depends. Cheesy, what's the?
We will see what my going rate is, Christian, for you. I will at least give you a 50p discount.
I think these two are going to have a bit more of a conversation off stream. I think that's going to happen.
But overall, what a way to tie up the championship. I think that's 8 wins this year. That's a pretty dominant performance.
Yeah, quite satisfying. I was a little bit gutted that Dave wasn't there to make it a bit more interesting.
We were talking about some of your battles from earlier in the season, and they have been epic.
Yeah, so I was hoping for a bit of that tonight, just to spice things up a bit. But I'll quite happily take it like that as well. I'm not complaining.
yeah, absolutely. Take that championship, put it on your mantelpiece, in a virtual mantelpiece, of course.
A virtual mantelpiece. Yes, I'm still yet to
get that winner's trophy.
Yes.
But yeah, all I say, congratulations. I think a really well-deserved champion, and season 5 champion is what you can call yourself.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Christian.
Cheers, guys.
Great stuff. Well done.
Brilliant stuff, Scott.
Yeah, brilliant indeed. And of course, for those who love Caterham racing, it's not quite over because we've got next weekend where Caterham Motorsport season ends for real. And if you don't mind me also mentioning as well, it also brings the end to, I guess temporarily for the moment, something else, because of course, Chris, as you announced on your social media, that for the foreseeable future this is going to be your final race weekend. Of course, so yeah, just talk us through that. Yeah, it's just circumstances lead it this way, really, and unfortunately, it's just it's going to be the last race weekend for the foreseeable future. You never say never, of course, and you don't know what your life's going to look like in 5 years' time. But for the time being, I'm going to be hanging up my helmet. I've had an absolutely brilliant it's been almost a decade now of sort of my life and my focus, and so it's going to be strange to walk away. But I'm pretty
pretty convinced I'm not going to be walking away from the paddock, and I'll be certainly trying to be a part of it and living vicariously through everyone else's successes.
Absolutely. Well, I think I speak for everyone that said it's been brilliant at least having you back this season, and I dare say that I think people are looking forward to the day when you do decide to at least pop yourself into a Caterham at least one more time for the foreseeable future if there's ever a guest driver in the mix. But yeah, I think that concludes the action for season 5. I guess the next question, of course, is talking about season 6. But I guess if we've got any kind of indication, Chris, the next question is, where do we go from here? Season 6 onwards.
Yep, we will have a season 6 over the winter period to give drivers, especially some of the drivers that haven't been able to join us through the season because it's just too busy with the actual racing season going on, give them a chance to get back out there on track and test their mettle. We've got always people joining up, so if you do fancy coming along, joining in, caterhamracer.com is the website, and it tells you, and there's a sort of a driver's manual, and sort of tells you all about what the seasons are and what we get up to and how you can get involved, and so that's what we encourage you to do. And obviously you can test your mettle against real world Caterham drivers and really quick peddlers of simulators at the same time. So we will probably spend the next few weeks planning what the season 6 is going to be. But watch this space and keep an eye out on that website and across. Sign up to the newsletter, and you'll know as soon as we do.
Well, once again, to wrap things up, I think I speak for everyone, of course, involved, not just watching, but of course everyone involved in the series. Well, first and foremost, Chris, thank you for taking the time out and the effort to put this all together. I know that everyone appreciates. I always enjoy doing these broadcasts alongside you. I know everyone enjoys being involved in the series. I know that all of the partners also enjoy being a part of it as well. So a big thank you, of course, first and foremost, and primarily to yourself, Chris, for making it all happen. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this and having had 5 amazing seasons in the first place. Thank you to all the drivers who've been involved and taking part, whether it's just one meeting or the whole season, and gone on to put in some fantastic effort. It's been great watching some of you develop over the last season or two, particularly this season, and getting quicker and quicker and making finding new stars and new front runners that can take it towards some of the more established and recognised challenges at the head of the field. Big thank you, of course, to, as I say, to Jaroslav Cherny and to Ben Obro in the background, of course, who continuously take all the feedback and all of the input from all the drivers and all the data which they are able to provide in the background to make these cars quicker, much better, much more realistic, much more akin to the real life cars. I know there is still some loose going on in the background with the, if I'm correct, the Road Sport 217 310R spec cars as well. So we'll have hopefully in the foreseeable, in the hopefully not too distant future, a full set that we can take the range from in terms of race cars from Academy to 420R, and primarily, I guess, as well, thank you for watching and watching out the season. For those who have been tuning in throughout the season, thank you for doing so. Thank you for all the kind comments, and thank you for all the support you've given over it. And I guess to sign off, one last thanks has to go to our fantastic sports supporters and sponsors.
But before we jump into the sponsors again, Scott, you are the voice of Caterham Motorsport and have been for a number of years, and it's great to have you on board, adding some of that authenticity over the top of the drivers doing their thing. So yeah, remiss of me not to thank you for all your efforts and work along that. So appreciate that very much.
Oh, stop it, you're too kind. But yes, no, appreciate it. I always enjoy doing these, whether it's real or virtual Caterham. I always enjoy being part of it. So big pleasure as always, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a fantastic thing to do. Never a chore at all. And so for the final time again, to wrap things up again, a big thank you to also our additional supporters for the season, because for one last time we sign off by saying that the caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship and caterhamracer.com in general is supported by just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. By also design display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, plus also additional support from Darren, Burke Performance Driver Coach. Christian Szaruta is the Season 5 caterhamracer.com champion. Now the question's got to remain as we take a break before the next one. The next question on everyone's lips is, what about Season 6? Can anyone stop him? And we'll be able to make it 2 in a row. From again, myself, Scott Woodwiss, Chris Hutchinson, and everyone involved in caterhamracer.com. If you are going to be checking out the final of Caterham Motorsport in Cadwell Park next weekend, do so. Either watch a live stream or watch trackside and support those who are going to be going on for the Road Sport 273 10R and 7 Championship UK titles. And on our behalf, very best luck to everyone competing for those. But until then, Thank you for watching, thanks for supporting, and stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled for more info on Season 6 of caterhamracer.com, real Caterham racing in a virtual world. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.